Kanse, I'm Krisanach Kate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. First Nations leaders, members, and advocates gathered in Ottawa on Tuesday to show their opposition to Bill C-5, the federal government's bill to enact interprovincial free trade and labor mobility, as well as fast-track resource projects in the national interest, in a direct response to the U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada. APTN's Annette Francis has more.
Hundreds came to the lawn of Parliament. They're here to call on the government to kill Bill C-5. Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler wasted no words in his message to Prime Minister Mark Carney.
That if you pass this bill, Bill C-5, that it will be a long, hot summer. Because we will not sit idly by and watch any government, whether it's Ontario or Canada, to come into our territory and take whatever or whenever they want it, because it is ours.
Bill C-5 is currently being pushed through Parliament with very little consultation with First Nations. Last week, Prime Minister Carney said Parliament would sit until the bill is passed. It would allow the federal government to fast-track major infrastructure projects deemed in the national interest. One way is by reducing the requirements for environmental assessments. That's why 19-year-old Jessica George made the 6-hour trek from Oneida First Nation.
I think it's important to protect our land and our waters because that's that's one of the most crucial parts of our culture is to protect our lands and the water.
NDP MP Saul Mamikal also came in a show of support. He said First Nations need to be a part of any discussion when it affects treaty rights, land rights, and the people that live on the lands. He said communities will rise up against Ontario's Bill 5 and the proposed federal bill.
And I think, you will see different direct actions from different areas. And one of the things is, there'll be obviously some peaceful demonstrations. But I think if there's no, pullback of the bill or repealing of the bill or killing the bills, I think things will just elevate slowly throughout the summer.
To go along the river.
Raymond Katakwapa is from Attawapiskat First Nation. He told the crowd the Anishinaabe Aski Nation Youth Council is starting a movement with youth across the country to make change.
Not be the same as I Don't Know More, KI6, 1492 and back. This will be different and real change will be made. Because we're not only building on top of what our predecessors have built for us, but we're going to the moon this time. And I believe in this generation.
Today,
according to the people here, actions like this will continue throughout Ontario and the rest of the country. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A former principal of a First Nations school in BC has been disciplined and ordered to take 2 educational courses for spanking a student. The educator had been previously disciplined for making inappropriate comments about the First Nations community. According to the BC Commissioner for Teacher Regulation, in November of 2023, another staff member witnessed Peggy Agnes Bohos Aranis spank a grade 1 student. At the time, Aranis was an elementary school principal. The incident was reported 1 month later to the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation. Aranis also falsely claimed the student's parents agreed to the spanking. In January of 2024, Aranis signed an undertaking to prevent any physical contact with any student. Aranis's teaching certificate was also suspended for 3 days, and she agreed to take a course on positive learning environment and systemic racism. In a consent resolution agreement by BC's Commissioner for Teacher Regulation, they added, Aranis did not act in student A's best interests, did not treat student A with dignity and respect, and did not create a safe and inclusive learning environment. Her actions perpetuated the harmful legacy of physical abuse in Indian residential schools and reflected a belief in harmful stereotypes. The name of the school was not disclosed to protect the student's identity. The First Nation terminated Aranis' employment in May of 2024. A search that took more than 2 years for a missing 24-year-old man from Merritt, British Columbia came to a sad conclusion recently as RCMP confirmed human remains were found. APTN's Tina House went to speak to the family and brings us this report.
I would do anything to say anything to him again. Whether it was an argument or, one of his bear hugs. But I love him with everything in me.
It's been an incredibly emotional and difficult 2 years for the Mack family after 24-year-old Miguel Mack went missing on February the 27th, 2023. In their words, their lives felt like a dreamlike state as they began the search for Miguel.
It was a fear of the unknown. I was afraid that I wasn't going to see him again. And then I had hopes that he's just in hiding. The only way I could describe it was it's a living nightmare.
His brother Elijah headed up the massive search, using the family home as a command center. Maps and grids were used to search everywhere, from fields, abandoned buildings, the forest, and the river.
So today, I believe we're going to head out down to Highway 8 towards Newayat Reserve and check the rivers, the hillsides, and go from there.
Sadly, Elijah had the grim task of dragging the river with the end of a rake attached to a rope, hoping to find his brother. At first, there were a lot of people helping, but as time went on, the family found themselves searching every day, sometimes alone.
There's 2 years where no one was involved, and it was a lot of just mom, and mom, and mom. And I've always told her, I'm like, every time I think you can't get any stronger, you do, because you just show up, right? And you do the things that nobody wants to do. And I just had to mention that because it's important as a mother and as a son, to be able to see that strength and that power of prayer as well.
Miguel's birthday, for example, I cooked his favorite meals and I would bring it out and do offerings. I would bring it downtown to the homeless and talk to them, and I would bring it to the river, and I was always at the river. I would go out in the woods. I would talk to him and plead with him to come home.
But they never found him. And after searching, sadly, the RCMP announced that they found the body of Miguel Mack.
In terms of where he was found, we're not completely sure of all of that information yet because it's still, in the
process of investigation.
Well, it's still with the Southeast District Major Crimes Unit, so they're still handling the case.
We do know he was found by a member of the public in April, and his death has been ruled a homicide. However, it took time to identify him. The RCMP released this statement. There are people out there with direct and indirect knowledge of Miguel Mack's death, and we are asking those individuals to come forward and contact the police.
Over 800 days of searching, I was starting to feel a little worried there. I put over 250,000 kilometers on my truck searching for him, and I was so worried if it broke down I won't have anything. It's a different pain. There was that pain of not knowing, not knowing. And then now it's like, now what? What do I do? How do I get up and not go out and worry about searching? And now there's a deeper pain of knowing that he's really not on earth with us now, and that's probably one of the hardest ones, is accepting that part.
He was raised in Merritt, BC, along with his 4 brothers by their mom, Marcella Mack. They grew up as a close, tight-knit family, and he was always laughing and joking with his brothers. Miguel, known as Miggy to his friends and family, fell in love with baseball at an early age, something he excelled at all his life. He was also the father of a young boy and a baby girl. Finally, he was honored in his New Hawk tradition, with his family bringing him to their home community in Bella Coola to be buried. Tina House, APTN National News, Merritt.
We have part 2 of Veronica Blackhawk's Face Value series on Indigenous identity and music. We're back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Part 2 of Veronica Blackhawk's series Face Value continues this week with her next segment, Accidentally Indigenous. A musician was called out in 2024 for their claim of ties to the Mi'kmaq community. As Veronica Blackhawk explains, now that they've traced these roots, their entire outlook has changed.
The missing are our matriarchs, our queens, our kin, our givers of life. We owe them answers, and we owe them action.
Identity, lineage, and kinship has always been at the center of Cody Bull's music, a reference built into their band name, Crownlands. Growing up, Cody was told they were Mi'kmaq and French. It wasn't until recently they learned they were neither.
As a kid, you look to your dad or your parents, and you kind of take it at face value. And I saw my dad. He's got really dark skin, and he looks very Indigenous.
In 2023, Crownlands was included in a campaign to expose Indigenous identity fraud. Cody took a DNA test and hired a genealogist with access to Mi'kmaq tribal archives.
I wanted to know the history of my family. It felt like a giant question mark. It was something that I just accepted as undisputable truth.
The Toronto musician grew up in Roseneath, Ontario. spending time in the nearby Alderville First Nation. Their family was accepted into the community and mentored by an elder.
I was like, well, we're Mi'kmaq. That's like on the other side of Canada. I don't think I can go there, you know, like, and he's like, oh, well, I'll teach you. And he took me out to harvest wild rice, and I did all sorts of like beautiful things. I went hunting with him.
Once DNA results revealed no connection to the Mi'kmaq, Cody set the record straight over social media. They also reached out to Millbrook First Nation.
I penned a letter apologizing for not vetting my claims and being like, listen, like, I understand, like, this is like horrible what I did, and I'm so sorry for claiming this without vetting my connections first. But I still believe in what is right, and I stand up for injustice, and you know, I hope that you accept this apology. I penned a letter of apology, and they accepted it. And it meant the world, you know. It meant
Crown Lands has toured Canada, opening for big names like Kiss, Jack White, and Greta Van Fleet. In 2021, before they knew the DNA results, they accepted a Juno Award for Breakthrough Artist of the Year and bringing Indigenous issues to the forefront.
We want to take this moment to talk about how every Canadian residential school should be thoroughly investigated. The families of those departed all deserve closure. People are living in abhorrent conditions in this nation, and there's a lot more to talk about here.
Cody hopes others facing similar questions around identity can learn from their story.
I'm trying to heal wounds that I created in a community that I didn't mean to create. Be honest and be brave, because no matter what somebody tells you, all you can tell them is your experience and what actually happened.
While they plan to continue releasing music under the name Crown Lands and advocating for Indigenous issues, Indigenous music professionals suggest a new approach to ensure community claims are vetted before access to Indigenous funding, spaces, and opportunities are provided. Tune in throughout the week to learn more about these concerns and the complexities of Indigenous identity in the music scene on face value. Veronica Blackhawk, APTN National News.
Thank you, Veronica. We now want to tell you about this week's new web poll question. Over on our website, we asked, do you believe the G7, which recently took place in Kananaskis, Alberta, considers Indigenous rights in its decision and climate, trade, and security? Your answers are yes, no, or not sure. Go to www.aptnnews.ca to have your say. The questions will be posted on the right-hand side of the homepage. Coming up after the break, we'll speak with a leader in Indigenous education who is this year's recipient of the Inspire Lifetime Achievement Award. We'll be right back. In Halifax, 14 in sun, Charlottetown, 23 and partly cloudy. Cartwright, 20, La Grande River, 17. 22 in St. Jovite, Quebec City, 21 and partly cloudy. Sunny in London at 27, Toronto, 27. Big Trout Lake, rain and 7, Sioux Lookout, 22. 9 in God's Lake, Churchill, 6. 19 in Gimli, 21 in Brandon. 19 in Saskatoon, 21 in Estevan. 14 in Buffalo Narrows and sun there, Stony Rapids, 11. Showers in Peace River at 23, Fort McMurray, 22. 28 in Lethbridge, rain in Calgary at 23. 27 in Kamloops, Campbell River, 20. 22 in Fort Nelson, Smithers, 19. Mayo, 23, Whitehorse, 21. 25 in Norman Wells, Wrigley, 26. 22 in Fort McPherson, Pawlatuck, 5 and partly cloudy. Showers in Chesterfield at 4, Whale Cove, 5 and rain. In Arctic Bay, 6, Agulik, 2. Thank you for staying with us. For more than 50 years, Harvey McHugh Wabagishik has worked to advance the health, well-being, and education of Indigenous people. He's an Order of Canada and Inspire Award recipient from the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. Our Dennis Ward recently spoke to him. Here's that interview.
Harvey, thanks so much for joining us, and congrats on the Lifetime Achievement Award. I know that the Inspired Awards are airing this weekend, but what did that honor mean to you?
Dennis, thanks for the invitation to be on the show, and the award means a great deal, and I think anyone who has received an Inspire Award in the past would agree. But you know, to be recognized by your peers is terrific, but to be acknowledged and recognized by your community is really a blessing. And I'm just very honored to have received the award from Inspire.
Spoiler alert for those watching this weekend, but your son got to give you the award too, eh? That must have been pretty nice.
Hey, talk about a surprise, and talk about a very pleasant surprise. Of course, the guy got his award several years before the old man, but I managed to catch up to him, and to have him on the stage introduce me and present me with the award. I mean, that's like fairy tale television.
You bet. Well, your son might be a full-time professor now, but more than 50 years ago, as a student at Trent University, you helped in the creation of an Indigenous Studies course that would become the first of its kind in Canada, something that's really now a mandatory course for a lot of post-secondary institutions all over the country. How do you reflect on such a milestone?
Well, again, you know, I look back on that history, and I have to pinch myself to remind me that hey, you were actually involved. You know, I was a 25-year-old kid off the res. I was unseasoned. I was only armed with a 4-year undergraduate degree. And the president of Trent University, Tom Simons at the time, said, you know, I like your idea of creating a program that will attract, well, he said the term in the 60s was Native students to the university. And he said, I want you to set aside your plan to go to graduate school. He said, graduate school will always be there, but he said, I want you to come and help me make this into something that will do what we wanted to do, which is bring more Indigenous kids to campus to study and to you know, just to give them a better education.
Right. You've dedicated decades of your life to education. Why has that been such an important issue for you?
Well, Dennis, you know, it's someone much more important and more knowledgeable than me said that education got us into this mess, and education is going to get us out of it. And I've believed that for my entire adult life. And like many other educators, I've recognized that the provincial systems of education, for a variety of reasons, just aren't meeting our needs, aren't meeting the needs of our young people, and that's why they're turning away from formal education. So I've been dedicating myself to really doing as much as I can to make education at the elementary and secondary level more relevant to our kids, to increase the amount of cultural education in the program, so that they can ground themselves, so that they can know who they are, so that they can acquire the resilience that we all need in order to do well and to succeed in our lives.
I think there was a stat back when you were helping put together that course that there was only like 200 Indigenous students in the post-secondary system at that time across the whole country. What have you seen in terms of changes over the years?
Well, it's been remarkable. I mean, there must be. I don't know the exact figures, Dennis, but I'm estimating there's got to be 20,000, 25,000 Indigenous kids in post-secondary education right now, and that's terrific. You know, we as Indigenous people, as the first people of Turtle Island, we've been excluded from the table in terms of what happens in this country, what happens to our communities, what happens to the economy of the country. And the more education our young people receive will increase the potential for us to sit at the table and make our contribution to improving not only the lives of our communities, but the lives of the country. You know, we're an essential part of Canada, and we know this land like no other people. And for years, our voices have not been heard; they've been silenced. And as our young people increase their education, and then you know, we're going to take our rightful place as members of this nation.
Good stuff, Harvey. Really appreciate you taking some time for us, and congrats again on the Lifetime Achievement Award.
My pleasure, Dennis, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Dennis. And that's your daytime newscast for this Wednesday. We're back again with your evening newscasts in a few hours, including a commemoration story on how it's been 10 years since Manitoba apologized for its involvement in the 60 scoop. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.